When the first generation Toyota 4Runner came out back in 1984, it was basically just a Tacoma truck with a cover over the bed. Now, over the years, Toyota has added more technology, more refinement, and of course, more capability to the 4Runner, and they've really separated it to become its own unique model to the point where the company sold about 150,000 of these in all of 2018. Now, the current generation Toyota has sent me over this 2019 model hasn't changed in over a decade, and with sales improving year over year, the big question I want answered, does Toyota need to make extensive changes to the 4Runner, or should they just leave well enough alone? That's what we're here to find out. So just like the rest of the Toyota truck lineup, the 4Runner is definitely getting up there in terms of age. The last time we saw a full redesign for this generation was back in 2010. So this has been almost a decade on the market with very little changes. But let's first talk about the styling of this 2019 model. This one, as you guys can see, is a TRD Pro model. You'll be able to distinguish it as a TRD Pro from the unique grille, where it actually has Toyota spelled out where they replaced the emblem. All 4Runners will have these halogen projector headlights, which by the way, they added these headlights back in 2014. If you guys are looking for LED daytime running lights or LED headlights or xenon headlights, sorry, it's just not available on the 4Runner. Instead, you'll just have halogen projectors with an incandescent turn signal. The TRD Pro does give you these unique LED fog lights, which are made by Rigid Industries. They definitely look good, but I don't like how they clash with the halogen headlights and the incandescent turn signals. Now, you will find a few fake vents on the front of the 4Runner. This right here is a fake vent behind the fog light housing. The hood scoop is also a fake vent, which again is nothing to do with the 4Runner. They've had something like this for years. And then I do like the front fascia that's kind of unique to the TRD Pro, that again is a throwback to the heritage. One thing you're going to notice about the 2019 TRD Pro models is underneath here, you'll be able to read the TRD Pro on the front skid plate because Toyota painted it red for the 2019 model year. So from the side profile, you can see that Toyota really hasn't made any changes to the 4Runner's design. It still has that traditional boxy shape that a lot of people love about a typical truck-based SUV like this. In fact, in terms of the size, this kind of sits right in between something like the RAV4 and the Toyota Highlander. It's wheelbase at 109.8 inches long and 191 inches long as well. This is roughly about the same size as the 4th generation 4Runner, only about an inch longer overall, maybe about a half an inch wider. Now, this TRD Pro model that I'm showing you has these unique 17-inch alloy wheels, which are black finished. They are TRD Pro specific wheels. They're also wrapped in all-terrain Nitto tires, which again, these are Kevlar reinforced. So these are basically some serious tires you're going to be using to go rock crawling, to go high speed, sand racing or whatnot. It also has an upgraded suspension for 2019. You have a Fox Racing shock at the rear and then TRD tuned Bilston shocks at the front. So again, that replaces the previous or the 2018 models Bilstein shock. So I'm sorry, it's a TRD tuned shock, not a Bilstein shock. And again, that was updated for 2019. Now again, very traditional look to it. I like the white exterior with the black accents that you have a TRD Pro badge at the side over here. And then in terms of the ground clearance, the 4Runner's ground clearance sits at 9.6 inches. It actually didn't change for the TRD Pro model, which is interesting. Although this ground clearance is already at the top of the class, I'm surprised Toyota didn't give it about an inch more of ground clearance. What they did do is they increased the height of this vehicle by about 0.5 inches for 2019. You'll be able to distinguish that from this new off-road or this roof basket that's at the top. It's a metal roof basket. This basically adds a half inch of height. So be careful if you guys live in urban environments. You cannot take the 4Runner TRD Pro into a garage that's lower than 7 feet in terms of the clearance. So looking at the rear end design of the 2019 4Runner, you can see again, it hasn't changed much since 2014, where Toyota basically replaced all the incandescent turn signals with these LED combination rear brake lights that you get on all the trims. As you can see, only the rear brake light and tail light is an LED. The turn signal is just an incandescent, and then then the reverse lights are also just an incandescent. You do have an LED brake light here at the top that's nicely integrated into this rear spoiler. That's something that the 4Runners have always had. Now, a couple of things that have carried over: this rear window does still roll down. That's always been a 4Runner trademark. And then the TRD Pro model gives you additional black accents here. You have a TRD Pro badge. You have a black accent here on the lower front, or the lower rear fascia. You have a tow hook or tow hitch that my tester has already included. And then the exhaust isn't chrome tipped or anything special. It's just kind of sitting there, kind of out of the way. Now, one feature that is annoyingly missing on a 4Runner at any price is a power rear liftgate. I don't understand why Toyota doesn't include a power rear liftgate on something that is approaching $50,000 when you guys get it fully loaded. But the one thing that 4Runner has always excelled at is the rear cargo area. You can see my tester has this accessory rear cargo organizer, and then it has this slide out rear shelf that will hold up to 440 pounds. This is definitely a cool, nifty feature, very unique in the class that the 4Runner competes with. This is like a $400 option if you guys want this. Now, speaking of which, my tester is only a 2-row. If you guys want a 3rd row seat, Toyota does offer that on the SR5 and limited trims for like 500 bucks. You're looking at around 46 cubic feet of space with the seats up here, with the 2nd row seats up. That's about 10 cubic feet more than what you're going to get in something like a RAV4. If you fold down the 2nd row, which folds down in 2 ways, you get around 89 cubic feet of space, which is, again, very high in terms of cargo volume, which makes the 4Runner, continues to make the 4Runner a very practical vehicle. Now, in terms of a spare tire, you actually get a full-size spare. It's going to be located underneath the rear cargo area that you have to access from the outside of the vehicle. Okay, so enough about the outside of this 4Runner, which hasn't changed over the last 5 years. Let's move on to the interior and see what Toyota has done to this vehicle over the years. First things first, here is the key fob for the vehicle. If you guys are looking for intelligent access key with push button start, you have to buy the limited trim if you guys are looking at a 2019 model. The good news is for 2020, Toyota has added it to the TRD Pro models, but if you guys have this model year or any other model year 4Runner, most of you are gonna have the in-key system with the remote keyless access system. So if you just push the lock button, it locks the doors. To unlock it, you have to push that button twice to unlock all the doors, and then the vehicle will unlock for you like every other system. Now, opening the door and looking at the interior of this TRD Pro, you're gonna notice a couple things. First of all, this is one of the trims that gets the Softex leatherette material. If you guys go for a limited trim, you'll have genuine leather with heated and cooled seats. These are just heated seats. They're also an 8-way power adjustable seat with a 2-way power lumbar. No memory. If you guys go for the limited trim, you'll have a memory, 2-person memory on the part of the door handle here. But overall, the interior definitely has that traditional Toyota look. The steering wheel is definitely an old steering wheel. The gauges look like they were lifted off of a early 2010 Toyota Matrix or Corolla. The seats, they're slightly unique to the TRD Pro. The TRD emblem is embroidered into the headrest. You have this contrasting red stitching, and overall, it looks fairly nice, just a little bit dated. One thing I am noticing, my tester has a running board here, which is optional, which is good, but there's no grab handle here on this A-pillar, which would assist short people like myself to getting into this car, which would be very nice, but nevertheless, kind of have to grab onto the steering wheel and kind of lift your way up, which is the way 4Runners have felt for the last 15 years, honestly, or more than that, like 20 plus years. But shutting the door definitely doesn't sound as solid as some of the newer Toyota products I've been in. The whole structure kind of shakes and there's a slight rattle when you shut the door. It just sounds a little bit hollow. But again, this platform dates back to the 4th generation 4Runner, which came out 16 years ago. Now, looking at this interior at a glance, you can see it's definitely an updated dashboard design from the last 4Runner I was in, which was like a 2010. They made slight tweaks to the interior in 2014, but nonetheless, it hasn't really changed much over the years because of that. Now, the key fob, because I don't have push button start, I usually put the key in my pocket, but not this time. You have to keep the key fob and stick the key in the ignition. If you guys had the push button start, it'd be here on the dashboard, but turn the key and then start the vehicle up. Now, one thing I am noticing, the 4th generation 4Runner had a function where if you just kind of twisted the key once, it would keep cranking automatically. Toyota's taken it away on this trim, at least. I don't know why, so you have to keep holding the key. I just remember my dad's 4Runner had that one touch feature, or that one turn feature, where it would automatically keep cranking. Now the engine, it's still the same 4-liter V6. It hasn't changed. This is the 1GR FE. They just added dual variable valve timing as opposed to the single variable valve timing on the 4th generation 4Runner. It's definitely a traditional truck noise that it emits. This is the 270 horsepower V6. We'll go into the test drive later on. Now, in terms of the interior materials, the 4Runner, when it was redesigned, when it was extensively redesigned in 2003, it was kind of like a luxury truck. They made it a luxury truck. Unfortunately for this generation, the 5th gen, when it came out, they really downgraded the materials. You can see the dash. It's all hard touch plastic. It's got some cheap material on the plastic. The previous 4th generation had a soft touch dash material, so that's kind of disappointing to see Toyota, you know, downgrade the materials there. The silver or the black painted, you know, plastic here, or the shiny black plastic in here definitely is going to be attracting a lot of smudges. This material here is interesting. It tries to look like aluminum, but it's definitely not aluminum. There's some faux carbon fiber trim on this particular trim, and then the TRD Pro has its own unique shifter, which again, you can kind of interchange this. It'll screw right off if you guys want to change out the shifter. The gauges, as I said, look like they were lifted off of a early 2000s Toyota Corolla. They are like the electroluminescent gauges, very tiny, tiny screen there with an electrochromatic display, no color like what you get in a lot of newer vehicles. The door panels here, hard touch plastic on this area, but it is the soft text material on this area where you would be resting your elbows. The windows are one touch automatic up and down for all 4, which is nice. You have a nice padded area right here where you can rest your elbows, a little bit more storage over there, which is definitely nice, and then more storage down here. This is all hard touch plastic. There's a couple of buttons there for the heated windshield, your mirror controls, dimmer switch, and then to turn it on and off the 120 volt household outlet that's in the back seat of this vehicle. Now the steering wheel, as you can see, it's a nice fat rim on the steering wheel. It's a tilt telescoping design. Toyota doesn't offer a powered tilt telescoping. You have to go to the Lexus for that. The steering wheel is nice. I like how it's nice and thick. I don't expect to find pedals on the wheel. Very Spartan in terms of buttons. You can see this controls the radio presets over here. This controls this little tiny screen over there. You can cycle between different sources. I'm surprised there's just not like an oil or voltmeter on something like a TRD Pro. It just seems silly that Toyota would be missing that. It's a very basic screen. Cruise control stock is over here. That old one, you have your Bluetooth controls. Remember, Toyota Safety Sense P is not included on this 4Runner. Toyota has added it for 2020, but 4Runners have never had Toyota Safety Sense P. Your volume knob is over there. The steering itself, it's electric power steering, but it definitely is very light and numb. We'll go into the test drive later on. Now, above you over here, you can see additional controls for the 4-wheel drive system. The TRD models will have that. You can see there's an electronic locking rear diff. You can turn off the stability control there. There's the active traction control, and then this is your crawl control where you can adjust basically an off-road cruise control. It'll keep applying the brakes for you when you're driving on a steep decline. This is your terrain response system. You can go between like rocks or sand, mogul, mud, snow. You can adjust this whenever you're in the four low range, which again, you can kind of switch them out here. So there's your different sources: mud, sand, loose rock, mogul, and then rock. So lots of great multi-terrain surfaces there. Again, this is going with the 4Runner's off-road theme. Now down here at the center stack, you can see hasn't really changed much. That screen is really, really small. It's a 6.1 inch display. This is the largest screen you can get on any 4Runner for 2019. Toyota has replaced this with an 8-inch touchscreen for the 2020 model, which supposedly has Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. Haven't seen it yet. It'd be one of the first Toyotas to have Android Auto, but nevertheless, going to there, it's the typical Toyota head unit here. It's got embedded navigation, which again, super old, very, very small, tiny graphics. Going to the home screen there, you can kind of customize what that looks like. If you put the vehicle into reverse, this is the only driver assistance tech this generation has for now, or the 2019 models have, a backup camera. It's very basic. It has no trajectory, just distance markers, no parking sensors, no 360 camera, no automatic parallel parking, just a backup camera. So very basic, no Apple CarPlay, no Amazon Alexa, nothing. In terms of your climate control, it's just a single zone manual. You guys have to get the limited to get the dual zone climate control. So kind of a downgrade again. My dad's 4Runner, which was an 03, it was an SR5, has dual zone automatic climate control. So Toyota kind of downgraded with this generation, which is kind of sad. USB and an aux port over here, although not really great places to put this, as you can't really hide your phone. There's a standard cup holder over here. This controls the antiquated 5-speed automatic transmission. It actually has a sport mode with a manual mode here. which is kind of unnecessary, but we'll go into the test drive later on. This is cool. This is an old school 4-wheel drive lever. You just don't see this anymore. The limited trims actually and the SR5 trims will have a rotary dial here instead. This is really cool because you can feel the engine vibrating. This is like directly linked to the drive shaft. It's in high 2 right now. Pull it all the way back. That goes into high 4. You can see the system will try to put it into high 4. Right there. When you want to go into reverse, you have to first go into neutral in the transmission, go all the way here to neutral, and then all the way there for L. And you can see once you put it in L, it turns off the stability control, the traction control, puts it in 4 low, and this is where you can access the crawl control and adjust exactly what terrain you want. So again, this is no poser vehicle, it's the real deal. And putting it into gear, you actually can hear the gears whining ever so slightly. So again, very old school. Some of you will really love that. It's one of the reasons why people love 4Runners. Another reason why people love 4Runner, this. That opens up the rear window that rolls down. Toyota is really the last of the brands that do this folding down rear window. So it's really great that Toyota has kind of kept that. You have heated seats over here, which is definitely nice. You just have like a dial that adjusts what you'd like. If you guys go for the limited trim, you'll have cooled seats, which will be put over there. Another cup holder here, another place for storage. The center console you can see is big, it's massive. It's got a good amount of storage. Great place to put your phone or your sunglasses. There's a power outlet in there. There's a little bit more storage there on the lid. It's nice and padded, doesn't adjust or move forward. The seats, I actually think the Softex seats are really comfortable. They're really nicely shaped, so Toyota's done a good job with making the seats comfortable. The glove compartment, as you guys can see, is a pretty good size. It's damped but not lined with felt. But overall, the interior of this vehicle still feels a little bit cramped. Above you, standard size sunroof. Toyota doesn't offer a pano roof. But again, remember how old this truck is. You definitely sit up high in this vehicle. It feels a little bit on the narrower side. You sit up a much higher than a lot of these car-based crossovers, which is one of the reasons why people love 4Runners. But overall, what Toyota needs to do, which they've done for 2020, update that antiquated infotainment system, update these gauges, and then if you guys are looking for a power lift gate, also just not available on this vehicle. So again, very strange that it's missing some key features that something like this, especially in this price range, should have. So hopping into the second row of the 4Runner, you can see the opening to get back here is definitely a little bit small. Other vehicles have given us a little bit of a wider opening. And then of course, for short people like myself, there's no grab handle to get back here. So it's a little bit of a hoist. You kind of have to pull yourself up into this vehicle, which is again one of the key differences between this and a car-based vehicle. Now, getting back here, you can see Toyota actually rates the legroom at a pretty paltry 32.8 inches. It definitely doesn't feel like it's that small. I'm 5'7" here. You can see headroom is okay. Legroom is good. The floor is almost completely flat back here, which is nice. I would say that it feels pretty much on par with a lot of other compact crossovers. You just notice that you sit up higher. The bench is a little bit higher. Now, in terms of features, you can see Toyota gives you rear seat vents. There's 2 power outlets over here. They did add 2 USB ports in the back for 2020 model year, but as you can see, this one doesn't have that. There's 2 map pockets here, which is nice. You have a nice little armrest here that folds down that gives you 2 cup holders, but don't expect to find things like heated rear seats or any of those sunshade stuff. The back seat in this vehicle is pretty Spartan. And then of course, if you guys are looking for a third row, the TRD Pro or TRD models don't offer that. You have to step down to an SR5 or get a limited trim. Now, under the hood of the 2019 4Runner, you can see Toyota also didn't make any changes. In fact, the engine is one of the oldest powertrains that Toyota still has in production. This is the same 4-liter 1GR FE V6 that debuted in the 2003 4Runner. Now, in this application, they did update it with dual variable valve timing for 2010, but it's still a port-injected engine. It makes 270 horsepower and 278 pound-feet of torque. Now, as you guys notice, this is a different motor than what's in the new Tacoma, which is a 3.5-liter V6. This technically has less horsepower than Tacoma, about 8 less horsepower, but it has more torque, about 12 more pound-feet of torque, which makes the 4Runner feel a little bit more quick versus the Tacoma, surprisingly. Now, it's still paired up with an antiquated 5-speed automatic transmission. It's one of the last new vehicles you can buy with a 5-speed automatic, honestly. Thankfully, Toyota got rid of the 4-speed auto before. Back in 2010, they actually used to offer this with a 2.7-liter 4-cylinder. And then, of course, the V8 was discontinued with this all-new 5th-generation model. Now, 4Runners are all equipped to tow about 5,000 pounds, and this thing's heavy. It weighed about 300 to 400 pounds more than the previous generation. This one, as it sits, is around 4,800 pounds. Fuel economy also is abysmal. It's rated at 17 in the city, 20 on the highway. Thankfully, it only uses regular gas, but let's get out on the road and see how it all performs. So come to think of it, I honestly don't think I have actually ever reviewed or driven a 4Runner for the channel. I mean, I know this vehicle very well because my dad has owned one since 2003. He still has one. His has like 115,000 miles on it. And driving the 2019 model literally feels like I'm driving his. There is very, very little changes that Toyota has made to this vehicle over the years. And honestly, this 5th generation model, when it first came out, I wasn't the biggest fan of the vehicle. I really preferred the 4th generation more in terms of its looks, in terms of the interior quality and whatnot. But really, this is such a dinosaur in Toyota's lineup, and really their entire truck lineup is just old. The Tacoma is their newest model, and I'm just really surprised that Toyota didn't trickle down some of the Tacoma's technology, specifically the engine, the transmission, into this 4Runner. I mean, it's still trucking along with that 4-liter V6, which I will say, the extra torque of the 4-liter is definitely noticeable. What really hampers it is the 5-speed auto in this car. It's just down 3 gears compared to all the modern transmissions that I've driven over the years. Let's just try a quick acceleration from a standstill here. The transmission itself, you can really feel the wide spacing in this transmission. It just, every time it shifts, it knocks the engine right out of its power band. Now, I will say, there's a good amount of torque off the line. I mean, this thing has more torque than the 3.5-liter V6 that's in the Tacoma. But if it was just paired with the 6-speed auto that was in the Tacoma, it would just be markedly improved. Now, granted, this is better than the 4-speed auto that was in my dad's 4Runner, but that's not really say that it's improving much. But the 4Runner, when you drive it, is just so old school. It is definitely full of character. You just don't have vehicles that drive like this anymore. The steering, for example, it feels like a recirculating ball type steering, and it's just requires constant corrections to keep the vehicle going in a straight line. It's very, very slow. The body leans heavily. Every time you turn the wheel, you just feel the suspension heave over on itself. And even the brakes, for example, you first step on the brakes, not really much in terms of bite, and then you just hit on it a little bit more, and it's just bam, the whole thing just nosedives. It's very irritating. So all in all, it's kind of a difficult task to drive this thing smoothly. It takes some getting used to. Now, granted, if you guys have had a 4Runner before, this will feel just like your old 4Runner, and that's the reason why so many people love these things. They feel like tanks. They feel bulletproof. They feel like you can go anywhere you'd want to. I mean, if I was in a zombie apocalypse, aside from the fact that this thing is a gas guzzler, I would easily choose one. I put a grill guard on the front and put some bars along the window and whatnot. And you know, for a V6 from Toyota, it's a torquey V6. I will say that it is a little bit on the raspy side. It doesn't like being revved. Its redline is around 5,800 RPM, and it does not enjoy being pushed that redline. So you kind of have to be careful, or you have to be mindful of that, because the engine itself is really happy in the meat of its power, in the middle of the power band, like between 2,000 to 4,000 RPM. This thing feels quick. In fact, 0 to 60 times are around 7.5 seconds for this combination, which again, it is pretty much class competitive, slower than all the car-based, like something like a Honda Passport is quicker than this to 60 by about a second, but this will keep pace with like a Nissan Murano, a Ford Edge, for example, if you don't get the ST version. But again, you don't really compare this to a Murano, a Passport, or a Ford Edge. You would compare this to a Jeep Wrangler, which will get to 60 in around 7.8 seconds with the V6. A Grand Cherokee with the 3.6-liter V6 is also very comparable, although you can upgrade the Grand Cherokee to a V8. Now, in terms of the handling and whatnot, on the road, this is where the 4Runner's weaknesses come into play. I mean, this is a truck-based SUV. You constantly notice that its ride quality is bumpy. It's like very jittery. The visibility in here, though, is good. You have to look over that fake hood scoop. You've got big side mirrors, no Toyota Safety Sense P or anything like that, so no driver assistance tech whatsoever in this vehicle, so you kind of have to keep that in mind. But, you know, in terms of the seat comfort, I think it's very comfortable. You can see around, you know, the vehicle very well. You just have to get used to sitting up really high, which a lot of you probably really like sitting up high anyways. But in terms of the quietness and whatnot, the engine is mostly quiet until you really push the revs past 4, then it makes itself known. But there is a fair amount of tire drumming because of these all-terrain tires whenever you guys go above 60 miles an hour. So I would probably recommend to go with a limited trim if you guys guys just plan to take this on the road. Again, most people drive 4Runners on the road. It's very rare that people actually take these things off-roading because nobody really does that anymore. I mean, for the ones of you, for the ones who do, more power to you. I mean, this thing will be phenomenal off-road. That's the reason why it's got really slow steering. It's got a suspension that's very softly sprung, especially with these Fox shocks. Basically, when I drive this vehicle on the road, I go over speed bumps like they're not even there. I can easily jump a curb if I'm trying to go around people. That's the beauty of about something like this. With 9.8 inches of ground clearance, whatnot, you basically feel like you're not, I wouldn't say invincible, but you could get around in most places, most situations where a lot of car-based SUVs probably could not. So this thing is rear-wheel drive when it's in its two-wheel drive mode. And the tail will step out, and the stability control gets very aggressive when you guys put your foot down hard. But it's cool that it's a rear-drive vehicle. That's one of the beauties about a body-on-frame truck-based SUV like this. But man, you don't want to be pushing this thing around some corners. Wow, that engine really doesn't like to rev. You don't want to push the engine too hard, but it will get out of its own way pretty well. But you feel the 4Runner's heft. It's a heavy vehicle, as I said. You feel the soft suspension. Being on the road is not this vehicle's strong suit. It feels really unhappy on the road. When you get it off the pavement, that's where the 4Runner is going to feel the most happy. I mean, the thing about this vehicle is it's so, full of character. It's so old school. It's probably the reason why a lot of people really like this car. And really, I think for the Toyota, what this 4Runner is, they need to keep it a truck, but you can make a truck drive more refined. I mean, I've driven the new versions, a lot of new trucks like the Ford F-150, the Ram 1500, the GMC Canyon, Chevy Colorado. Those vehicles, and the Jeep Wrangler, of course, those vehicles don't feel quite as cumbersome as the 4Runner to drive on the road anymore. And Toyota has the ability to make the 4Runner drive really well. But it's just a matter of them putting in the money to invest into a new platform and whatnot, or refine this vehicle's dynamics even more so. Now, let's talk a little bit about the fuel economy, because I said earlier this is a pretty bursty vehicle, and I've only been averaging around 13.5 miles to the gallon in mostly city driving. That is atrocious. That's worse than gas mileage that I've gotten like a Ram 1500 or a Ford F-150 or a GMC Sierra and whatnot. On the highway, the best I could muster in this thing was about 17.5 miles to the gallon. That's below the EPA numbers of 17, 20. I imagine you may be able to do a little bit better if you guys go for maybe a non-TRD Pro trim. These tires and that big roof basket, whatever, are just not helping with the aerodynamics. There's a lot of rolling resistance. But other than that, the 4Runner is still a really pleasant car to drive, and I have fun driving it. I just would love to see Toyota improve the fuel economy, make the on-road manners a little bit nicer, add some new technology into this vehicle that would bring it into the 21st century. But other than that, you're still going to have a lot of fun when you drive these, especially if you decide to take it off-road. So even though it's been quite a while since I actually had a chance to drive and review a Toyota 4Runner for you guys, I'm pretty familiar with this vehicle in general because my dad bought one of these when I was 13 years old back in 2003, brand new, the 4th generation model, which I was such a huge fan of that vehicle when it first came out. And I have to say, when this generation 4Runner, the 5th gen, came out in 2010, I was actually slightly disappointed. I didn't think it looked better on the outside. I thought the interior was a lot cheaper. But the one thing that Toyota has kept in check here is the 4Runner's truck-based roots. As you guys saw from the test drive, it definitely is not the best on-road driving vehicle that you can buy in the segment. It definitely has all that, the truck qualities, from the wandery steering to the bumpy ride quality to the somewhat cramped interior. But what the 4Runner gives you in return is just an old school freshness. Nothing else really feels and drives like this on the market. Really, you have to buy a Jeep Wrangler to even come close. And that kind of brings me to the question that I asked at the beginning of this video. Does Toyota need to fully redesign the 4Runner to make it basically more modern? And my answer to that is yes and no. They really need to keep the vehicle a truck. That's the one thing that keeps the 4Runner super relevant in Toyota's extensive SUV lineup. It needs to remain a truck, but what they could do is they could easily modernize this vehicle. They need to improve the on-road dynamics because, let's face it, even though this is the TRD Pro model, most of you are probably going to be driving this on the road. They really need to improve the fuel economy. The 13 mpg that I got is just abysmal. That's basically worse than most of the new full-size pickup trucks that I've gotten that easily weigh about 1,000 pounds more than this 4Runner. And really, they just need to elevate the tech features, like a power liftgate would be nice, a 360 camera with some off-road tech would be great. a much better infotainment system with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which again is coming for the 2020 model year, along with Toyota Safety Sense P. So really, if you were going to purchase this generation 4Runner, I might suggest waiting for the 2020 model, but just keep in mind, Toyota is working on an all-new version of this truck, along with the rest of their aging or very aged truck lineup. But until then, if you guys are looking to purchase this particular 2019 model, what's it going to cost? Well, the 4Runner's base price is definitely more expensive than something like a Jeep Grand Cherokee or a Jeep Wrangler. Those are the two main competitors I still consider to be a competitor to this. It starts at $35,110 for a base SR5 with two-wheel drive, which is rear-wheel drive. If you guys want to step up to the SR5 Premium for another $1,400, I highly recommend it. It'll give you the soft text leatherette, the heated seats, the embedded navigation system, and the power driver seat, stuff like that. For $36,800, it's actually still a really good deal. This TRD Pro model is basically the most expensive if you don't include the fact that there's a new limited nightshade package, which is like around $500 more than this. This starts at $46,880. Add the couple accessories my tester has and the $1,000 for destination, and you're looking at around $49,115. Which again, almost $50,000 for a truck that's this old sounds crazy. And what's even more crazy is I heard that Toyota dealers are actually charging sticker and up for TRD Pro models. So my recommendation, probably go for the limited to get the push button start and the heated and cooled seats. But really, if you're looking for an SUV that's dependable, reliable, it's got really strong resale value and has that refreshingly old school charm, you're gonna wanna put a 2019 4Runner at the very top of your list. But I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on this 2019 Toyota 4Runner TRD Pro. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews. Like us on Facebook. And as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.